Going on, everybody? It's PT Sports 84 back with another NBA 2K24 video. Today is the 7th official ratings update for NBA 2K24. Today is Thursday, March the 7th, 2024. As always, we're going to dive right into it. Lots of changes for this one. We've got position changes. We've got, obviously, ratings changes. No retro content added or anything like that. I know there was a patch that dropped this morning. I know everybody's going to kind of ask that. No retro content, no likeness updates that I am aware of that I've found so far. But yeah, let's dive right into the video. As always, we start with the Philadelphia 76ers. So their changes, I'm going to run through the ratings changes, then talk about the team just a tiny bit. For each team to give some context around the ratings. Not a deep dive like I've been doing with the Real 2K Insider. Unfortunately, John has a job interview later today, so he wasn't able to make this broadcast. So shout out to him for all his hard work. He put together a lot of notes for this one. Unfortunately, we can't do it together, but I hope that John will be able to put out a video on his own, possibly maybe tomorrow or this weekend. Always enjoy his analysis. Make sure you're going over to Real 2K Rosters. Subscribe to him on YouTube. Subscribe to his Patreon as well to get the Google Doc that he has with all the ratings updates and stuff. But let's jump right into the update itself, officially from 2K. So first up, Tyrese Maxey goes a +1 to an 88 overall. Surprisingly, Tobias Harris didn't go down. I was a little surprised on that one. Kyle Lowry goes +1 to a 77. Overall, we get Nick Batum going -1 to a 75 overall. KJ Martin goes +1 to a 75. -1 for Mo Bamba to a 74. And then Ricky Council IV goes +1 to a 73 overall. Interesting enough for the 76ers, they had a lineup change in this one. What's going on, Josh Smooth? Good morning to you. They had a lineup change. They moved Maxey to the 2, so Lowry can start at the 1. You've got Batum fluctuating in and out of the lineup, kind of at the 3. Tobias Harris still playing the 4. And then you actually have Mo Bamba starting at the 5. Interesting enough, with Paul Reed coming off the bench, that kind of gets him in a familiar role. So I think that helps. They get Batum back healthy. Like I said, he's fluctuating in and out of the lineup at the 3. Buddy Hield shifted down to the 2 because Tyrese Maxey was out the last game, but he primarily has been the starting 3 now. So that gives you Kyle Lowry, Tyrese Maxey, Buddy Hield, Tobias Harris, and then Mo Bamba as the starting 5. It allows for the 5-out offense for them. Some small notes for the team. Kenneth Lofton Jr. was waived. They bring in Jeff Dalton Jr. On a 2-way contract. They still have 2 open roster spots to fill on the team. I would expect a big man to at least be one of them. And then from there, we'll see what happens with the other spot. Yeah, the Sixers haven't looked great. Let's just say that. They are 3-4 since the All-Star break. So not great for them. We'll see what happens moving forward. But let's move on to the Milwaukee Bucks, who have been hot. They have gone undefeated, 6-0 since the All-Star break. Doc Rivers has really improved the defense. Damian Lillard is looking a little bit more comfortable within the offense. Quick housekeeping notes. They did get Jalen Galloway out of the NBL for the Sydney Kings. He is now on a 2-way contract there. So Milwaukee Bucks, their changes in this one, just some smaller updates to the rotation guys. Patrick Beverley, who's been playing phenomenal, has really reshaped kind of the chemistry on the team, because he demands perfection on both sides of the ball. Really a glue guy for the locker room and on the court. He goes +1 to a 76. We get a -1 for Danilo Gallinari to a 75. Jay Crowder has been struggling shooting the ball. He goes -1 to a 74. And then last but not least, Pat Connaughton goes -1 to a 72. Interesting the way that the defense has really improved, because if you know Doc Rivers, you know that he's going to preach defense. He's going to preach transition defense. Really kind of baffled that Damian Lillard didn't have some sets already in the offense. That was what made him comfortable in Portland. So he's kind of added those in per what Damian Lillard said in the interview. I'm watching the games. I don't notice a ton different offensively, but defensively you can notice a huge amount of changes for them. So, yeah, I got to give Doc Rivers credit. You know, I've criticized him in the past, but you got to give him credit here for what he's done to the defense. They're like 5th in defense, I believe. What's really going to help them is when they get Chris Middleton back healthy. Really going to need him moving forward. But let's move on to the Chicago Bulls. They've been treading water like they always do. Luckily, they have Kobe White and they have Nikola Vucevic as well, playing well since, pretty much for Kobe White's been playing well all season. He's one of the most improved candidates. But Vucevic's been playing really well over the past month or so, really kind of going after it. With the Bulls, their changes, Andre Drummond goes +1 to a 79. Ayo Dosunmu goes +1 to a 78. And Anrelup Batum, cannot pronounce it. I have it written down. I still can't. Still fumble it. +2 to a 70 overall. Looking at the Bulls, at this point, I think Torrey Craig will end up coming back in the next couple games. He kind of solidifies your bench forward role. Looking at the Bulls, I mean, I would give some more minutes to, and they have been, to Julian Phillips, but Tim gets on the floor. You got to kind of get those guys. Dalen Terry's been awful. Get some of the younger guys in there, but I think as long as they're right there in the play-in, they're comfortable for whatever reason. I'm not sure about the patch updates. There is no news. An update popped up this morning, but I don't know what's changed in it. I tried to find some shoes, tried to find some player likenesses. I didn't see anything, but we'll see. I'm surprised here that DeMar DeRozan didn't get like a small boost, like a +1, just because he's had some scoring outburst games, a couple games of 30+. Drummond, I thought, could go up a little bit, like +1 more, like to an 80 at least. But it is what it is. Let's go over to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're a little bit of a mess right now. Donovan Mitchell is out at least for the next 2 games, maybe 3 games. JD, yeah, the likeness updates have been lacking this year for the overall in the game, retro included. They haven't done as many in the past, so we'll see what happens maybe next year. Maybe they get back on track. But yeah, looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers, Mitchell's out with the PRP injection in his knee. Mobley's out probably at least for 2 weeks, maybe more, with the ankle sprain. He doesn't seem to be having a good year at all compared to in the past. He was basically on people's radar last year as a defensive player of the year, and this year he's kind of taken the step back. He's got to learn to shoot threes on offense, because him and Jared Allen next to each other is not really getting it done. But looking at the changes for the team, Max Strus goes +1 to a 77 overall. Isaac Okoro +1 to a 77 overall. -1 for Georges Niang to a 75. And then Dean Wade drops down -1 to a 72. Remember that the games from last night do not count into this ratings update. So anything that happened, performance boost wise, especially like Dean Wade, is not going to count into this update. Looking at them, they ended up waiving Sharif Cooper, so now they have an open roster spot. You convert Craig Porter Jr., who actually is back in the rotation as of last night. Sam Merrill shooting it well, overall. So looking at them, I think they'll be okay, but I also think that they could be what you call an easy out in the playoffs. Not somebody that a lot of teams are scared of, especially if a team like a Miami plays them. I favor Miami. Um, it just all depends. Like Philly could play Cleveland, and Cleveland can get the edge if Embiid's not healthy. If Embiid is healthy, then I give the edge to Philly. It just all depends on matchups there. But let's go over to the Boston Celtics. Were on a roll. They finally lost a game. I am shocked that Jaylen Brown didn't go up one. He had a couple good games throughout this rating cycle, but changes for them with the Celtics, excuse me. Derek White goes +1 to an 85. Peyton Pritchard +1 to a 76. That is it for them. I am kind of really surprised Jaylen Brown didn't get the 90 overall designation, just from the scoring output that he was able to put out. Funny that he had the interview where, like, hey, if they're going to sag off me, I'm going to keep shooting. I hope everybody has this game plan as the Warriors and Steve Kerr. That was kind of funny. What's going on, Hugo? What's going on, Brandon? At JD, yeah. Porter Jr., I would suspect will get a face scan by next year. I think the guys that they missed this year, like the two-way guys, I think they'll catch them at Summer League next year, especially like G.G. Jackson, like guys like that. I think they'll get a scan in. With Brown being at 89 right now, I thought, he could get a little boost. But it is what it is for the Celtics. Going over to the Clippers. So the Clippers have struggled since coming out of the All-Star break. They lose Russell Westbrook to the broken wrist. That's going to hurt them. Hugo, not that I know of with the likeness updates. Maybe they got something and I missed it. I didn't go through every player, but the main ones that I look for are like two-way guys and guys that don't have face scans. I don't really go through, per se, the ones that already have scans. So if you guys want to look while I'm doing this video, you can hit me with anybody you noticed that changed. I don't think anybody did, but we'll see. But yeah, the Clippers struggled 3-4 since the All-Star break. Yes, Paul George is kind of struggling with a little bit of an injury, so that kind of hampers things a little bit. Looking overall, the changes for the Clippers, we do get Russell Westbrook, who was struggling before the injury. He goes -1 to an 80 overall. Terrence Mann finally gets boosted back up, +2 to a 76 overall. I don't know how he was down to a 74 for so long. Bones Highland is back kind of playing sporadic minutes. He goes -1 to a 74. And then PJ Tucker finally drops -2 to a 72. He's been awful this year. And he's complained. He hasn't really played much. He played like one game since November. Looking at it overall, Kawhi is doing his thing, but you got to get more out of the team overall. Like Harden is going to have nights where he's up and down. Once I think Paul George gets healthy again, the Clippers are scary. If you play them in the playoffs and they stay healthy, this team could really make it to the conference finals, I think. Now, if they get an injury or two, like Paul George isn't right or Kawhi's kind of not right, then that could change the whole landscape of things. But I like them in the playoffs if healthy. Let's go over the Memphis Grizzlies, another team that's really decimated with injuries. They were already missing Bane Smart and Ja Morant, along with Brandon Clark. And now you lose Zaire Williams for like a month, pretty much probably the whole season. And then Derrick Rose has been up and down, for the year as far as injuries goes. I don't know that he has much longer in the NBA, to be honest. I think maybe one more year for him. But overall, looking at the Grizzlies, they're not trying to win right now. It's all about the development of guys, especially like Vince Williams, G.G. Jackson. Jake LaRavia is starting to play now that he's healthy. But looking at the team, Jaren Jackson Jr. goes +1 to an 87. We get Lamar Stevens, who's been a focal point in the rotation, goes +1 to a 75. Jake LaRavia does go back up to a +1 to a 73. He's been in the rotation. And then Yuta Watanabe has struggled really badly shooting the ball. He goes -1 to a 71 overall. I thought Jordan Goodwin, who's played some good minutes for them, deserved to go up. He didn't get a bump. Overall, like the Grizzlies right now, like I said, is just development. Guys like GG, Jordan Goodwin, Jake LaRavia, Trey Jemison, those guys need to get those minutes for a young Grizzlies team. Atlanta Hawks, they lose Trae Young. This is basically the audition for Murray to be the point guard and them to see if they want to explore moving Trae Young. I know a lot of people have talked about Trae Young to San Antonio. To me, that would be perfect. That takes him out of Atlanta. That gets him to be kind of the 1A, 1B with Wemby. Allows him to have a lob partner in Wemby. Wemby gets easy buckets. Trae can kind of do his thing as well. You got Devin Vassell as the 2. Then you figure out you'll probably have Sohan at the 4. Then looking at it, if Keldon Johnson's moved, then you kind of piece together the 3. Or you move Vassell to the 3 and you got Branham at the 2. They have good combinations. I think Trae to San Antonio really would benefit overall. Both Trae and Atlanta, because they get some picks back and some young players, and San Antonio. So everybody wins in that scenario. But I don't know that Atlanta will pull the trigger just because we know Atlanta is very, very hesitant to make any kind of moves when it comes to major shakeups. So, I mean, it took long enough to trade Collins. They had some deals on the table for Murray. They didn't want to move him. We'll see what happens there. But Hawks changes. We get DeAndre Hunter +1 to an 80 overall. He actually swaps to power forward position-wise. Sadiq Bey to small forward position-wise. And then Bruno Fernando is the only other change, +1. He's got sporadic minutes because Capella's been out, or Okongwu's been out with injury. Capella was out, now he's back. Interesting enough, they get Dylan Windler on a 2-way contract, another shooter kind of to add to the team. You get Kobe Buffkin some minutes. They ended up waiving Patty Mills, so Buffkin is going to get some time to play. He was lighting up the G League, so let's see what he could do in the actual NBA. You don't know till you give a guy a chance. So we'll see. Bogdanovich is kind of fallen back to earth, but I think he might get it going. They need him to kind of be more of a focal point on offense, especially being the starting 2. Jalen Johnson, obviously, great performances from him. Good scoring output. He is one of Quinn Snyder's favorites. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with them. They also converted Trent Forrest. So Trent Forrest will actually play split minutes with Kobe Buffkin at the point guard spot as a backup. So Miami Heat, looking at them, they've been rolling since the All-Star break, 5 wins since then. They actually get Patty Mills from waivers. They move on from Drew Smith, who was out for the year with an Achilles injury. I believe it was Achilles or ACL. I can't remember which one. DeLon Wright comes to the team. That kind of really helps them at the point guard spot, stabilizes that. We get changes-wise with the Heat, we get a +1 for Bam Adebayo to an 88 overall. Duncan Robinson goes +1 to a 78 overall. Then we get Nikola Jovic goes +1 to a 76. And then Haywood Highsmith goes +1 to a 75. Interesting enough, Jovic is back starting at the power forward spot, holding his own. He looks good next to Bam Adebayo. Duncan Robinson's really fighting for that shooting guard spot. A lot of people have clamored for Hero to come off the bench, but what you got to realize is if Tyler Hero comes off the bench, it shakes his confidence, and it also lowers his trade value for the offseason if they want to move him. You don't want to lock him in as a 6-man and then try to move him and get some legitimate assets back. You want to kind of keep him rolling in the starting lineup and hope he can kind of flourish as the year goes. Duncan Robinson, although he's been shooting it great, I just think Tyler Hero, just from Miami's standpoint and Hero's value overall, is better in that starting lineup. Let's go over to the Charlotte Hornets. This is the team that's all about development, as they have a new regime that took over in the front office. Jeff Peterson is now the GM or player, basketball operations, president of basketball operations. We'll see what happens with them. The bench has kind of been the key to this team with, interesting enough, with an injury to Caleb Martin, who was playing well. Trey Mann shift to the 2 guard with Vasily Micic at the point guard. Oddly enough, Micic didn't get a bump. Mann only gets a +1 bump. And then Grant Williams has kind of been playing power forward center hybrid. He's turned it around since being in Charlotte. He gets a +1 to a 77 overall. Trey Mann gets the 76 +1 bump. Nick Smith, oddly enough, gets a bump to a 74 +2. He hasn't really played, so I don't understand this bump at all. Davis Bertans gets a bump +2 to a 74 overall. He's kind of been the combo forward for them. And then Bryce McGowan's goes -1 to a 72. But yeah, going back to the team, obviously Brandon Miller has been the focal point of the team. Scoring outputs have been really good for him. Nick Richards' scoring output's been really well. This team definitely needed some more ratings changes, in my opinion. Some boost for some other guys, but it is what it is. LaMelo, I don't think he comes back for the rest of the year. I think they really kind of want to see what they have. Same with Mark Williams. They want to see what they have with the young guys. And Micic, obviously being a veteran from Europe, they want to make sure he can kind of be the solidified backup moving forward. Trey Mann, you want to see what value you have at the 1 and the 2. Pokashevsky will get some minutes eventually, I think. So just kind of making sure they develop guys moving forward, see what they have, see what they don't as the new regime takes over. Going over to the Utah Jazz and their changes. Big change for Keontae George. He actually gets a big boost in this one. He goes +3 to a 79 overall. We get Talen Horton-Tucker +1 to a 76 overall. And Taylor Hendricks, who's now hurt, out for a week with an injured right toe, gets a +2 bump to a 75 overall. They are all about development. What is it, a 5-game losing streak, I believe? We get guys like Bryce Sensabaugh. He's in the rotation now. You get Luke Samanic in the rotation now as kind of the backup. So they're really kind of pushing development. I'm surprised Otto Porter didn't find a home. I guess he couldn't agree to a buyout money-wise with another team to recoup the money he would buy out with Utah. So he stays put, but he's gone away from the team. He's not going to play. Lauri Markkanen has kind of taken a little bit of a backseat from a scoring standpoint lately. So we'll see what happens overall with this team moving forward. I think they just kind of really push development, and that's about it. That's all you can hope for with the Jazz. Sacramento Kings, we finally get Domantas Sabonis in the 90 overall club, +2, well-deserved. He basically has been on a tear with triple-doubles pretty much for most of the season. De'Aaron Fox gets a +2 to an 89 overall, well-deserved for him. Trey Lyles goes -1 to a 76. And Chris Duarte, who's back in the rotation mildly, gets a +1 to a 74 overall. Malik Monk, I thought might get a boost, +1, but he stays put. He's been doing really well. Harrison Barnes, still with no badges. I like to bring that up every update. The Kings. It's kind of like if you know Mike Brown as a coach, the first year he's all about building culture, being a voice, all that stuff. And then it's just kind of like middle of the pack as a coach. It seems to me that that's what's trending forward for him. Like guys bought in last year that was like, hey, let's light the beam and all that stuff. And this year, it just seems like, they're okay. They didn't make any major moves in the offseason, no deadline moves. Their major move was Sasha Bezenkov. And then, he's been up and down in the rotation. Now he's hurt. No real big man behind Domantas Sabonis that's really any good, in my opinion. They've been playing Lyles as a small ball 5. JaVale McGee's not really panned out. Alex Lynn's not panned out. It's interesting enough with this team to see what changes they make. I think in the offseason you may see Herter and Barnes kind of move. They solidify the backup, backup guard. Do you lose Malik Monk? Possibly. That's a big question mark moving forward. New York Knicks, thank goodness Jalen Brunson was not majorly hurt, if anybody saw that. Injury, I thought it was the Achilles at first, but luckily it was just he hit off of knee to knee with Isaiah Hartenstein. It's just a bone bruise. He'll be okay. They're getting back OG Anunoby fairly soon, so I guess that's why 2K took off the injury designation for him. They haven't really won lately, and I'm worried about guys playing big minutes and being run down overall. If you know Tom Thibodeau, you know he likes to run guys in the ground, and that could really hurt them come playoff time. Like I said, it's all about seeding when it comes to teams. You can get upset in the first round just based on your matchup, or you could really skyrocket like the Hawks did a few years ago, depending on injuries and matchup luck. We will see. But looking at the ratings, -2 for Isaiah Hartenstein to an 80 overall, -1 for Bojan Bogdanovic to an 80. Josh Hart goes +2 to a 79. He's been really, really playing well. Precious Achiuwa +1 to a 78 overall. +1 for Miles McBride to a 77 overall. And then -1 to a 77 overall for Alec Burks, who's kind of playing a combo role as a backup. Interesting enough, Bogdanovic, I don't know how he went down because he had a couple 20-point games lately, but it is what it is. I thought Jericho Sims deserved to go up. He's been playing well. He's actually been starting some games. I thought he deserved a small boost. They do get Shake Milton off waivers. He's not really going to play a ton. I think he's just kind of depth for them. They really need to get Julius Randle back healthy. They bring back Jacob Toppin on a two-way contract as well. We'll see what they do if they fill their rosters or what they fill their roster spots with. Can't get Taj Gibson for 10 days because he went to the Pistons. So we'll see. Lakers. Obviously, with the Lakers, 40,000 points for LeBron James. Hell of a feat for him. Congratulations to LeBron James. Looking at Anthony Davis, he goes +1 to a 94 overall. LeBron, they couldn't really bump because I think they had him already too high. So 96 is probably about where he would be based on his recent performances. AD gets that boost. That's good for him. D'Angelo Russell +1 to an 83. He's been playing really, really well. Had 26, two games ago, I believe. Looking at Taurean Prince, he goes +1 to a 76 overall. Good for him. Spencer Dinwiddie, who many thought was going to be a great signing for them, has been absolute trash since signing with them. -2 to a 75 overall. And then Jackson Hayes, -1 to a 75 overall. We'll see what happens moving forward. Some housekeeping notes for them. Harry Giles is now on a two-way contract. They let go of Dylan Windler, who I mentioned earlier, now has taken a two-way contract with the Atlanta Hawks. Orlando Magic, some changes recently for them. Key in the lineup, Jalen Suggs has been the starting point guard. They had Fultz coming off the bench with Cole Anthony and Anthony Black filling in with the guard rotation. And Fultz takes Anthony Black's minutes when he's healthy. Interesting enough with the Magic, they really have been on a tear. 7-1 since the All-Star break, 5-game winning streak for them. They have boosted themselves up to 4th in the East. If you're a team that is like the Knicks, Philly, you want to get that 5th matchup because you're like, hey, we might be able to take out a 4 seed if they stay that way, Orlando Magic team. It gets Orlando with, it's basically Banchero and Franz who've been killing it. Suggs with a couple good performances as well. Wendell Carter Jr. is kind of back on track. Speaking of ratings real quick, +1 to an 80 overall for Suggs and Wendell Carter Jr., -1 for Fultz to a 79, Goga Batazde, -2 to a 75, and then Caleb Houston, who is filled in well in the rotation when needed, goes +1 to a 72. What they're going to need is they're going to need guys like Wendell Carter Jr., Jalen Suggs to play really good defense. on guys because you get the scoring out of Banchero, you get playmaking and scoring out of Wagner. So they could be a team that surprises in the playoffs, but I think they might be a first round exit personally, but we will see. I thought that Gary Harris deserved to go +1 at least just because he's been starting at the 2, brings you some good defense and things like that. So let's move to a team that I am highly disappointed in. They were rolling before the All-Star break, and since the All-Star break, it's like they do not give a shit on defense. They didn't care much before, but now it's really bad. With the pairing of Luka and Kyrie, you're always going to have defensive lapses, but I don't know what the hell Jason Kidd's doing as the head coach. You get PJ Washington and you get Daniel Gafford, but you still play Maxi Kleber at the end of games. You're still riding Tim Hardaway Jr., who's been absolute hot garbage shooting the ball, saying, hey, we still got to roll with you to build confidence and this and that. Well, you got Dante Exum who can defend. He can hit shots too. Why not play him more minutes since he's healthy? That's just my opinion. But, overall, the Mavericks, man, if they miss the playoffs again, they're going to be in the play-in because I think the 10 teams that are locked in are going to be what they are. It's just a matter of where the seeding's going to be. But I think they hit the play-in, they could lose. If you play the Lakers in a play-in game, you might get bounced in that first game. And then you're out. You're not making it. I just don't see it. Because then you got to beat 2 teams to get in. It doesn't make sense. To me, overall, with the Mavericks, Jason Kidd, to me, should be let go in the offseason. But because he's tight with Mark Cuban, I don't know that it's going to happen. Overall, though, Jason Kidd, defensive numbers, even though he was a defensive player, defensive-minded, they're never going to be good because your guys are Irving and Doncic who don't give a shit about defense. You could have Lively. You could have Exum. You could have Josh Green. You could have even Jaden Hardy plays decent defense. Derek Jones Jr., those guys aren't going to help you build the foundation if your star guys aren't going to play defense. But Jason Kidd's rotations, Jason Kidd's stubbornness to keep guys in the rotation that shouldn't necessarily be playing as many minutes is what's going to cost them. But speaking of performances, -1 to a 78 for Tim Hardaway Jr. Dwight Powell finally gets a ratings reduction, -2 to a 74 overall. He's not in the rotation at all. So PJ Washington, hopefully, he had a good 20 points in his last game. Hopefully that kind of gets him going. He's had a couple good games lately. I think he can really help them. Gafford's a guy. I want to see Gafford and Lively split the center minutes, 24 minutes, 24 minutes. If you got a hot hand or you're playing well defensively, then give a little bit more minutes and less to the other guy. But those are the two that should be playing. Spot minutes here and there for Maxi Kleber at the power forward spot whenever, he's needed. If, PJ Washington's having an off night, then you play Kleber there. That's just simply what it should be to me. Then you split Green and Exum at the small forward. Split some minutes with Hardy over Tim Hardaway if Hardaway's struggling shooting the ball because he's not guarding defensively. So let Hardy play some minutes. Why not at this point? AJ Lawson can play some minutes. He defends. He can shoot it. Why are all these minutes going to Tim Hardaway? But I'm not going to spend all video on Dallas. They just one of the teams I watch. My buddy Matt is a huge fan of Dallas, so we talk about them all the time. But, yeah, let's go over to the Nets. So Kevin Ollie comes in as the head coach. If you can't get effort in your Kevin Ollie and you couldn't get any effort out of Jacque Vaughn, it's got to come down to Bridges being the focal point for the team. How much voice does he really have? Cam Johnson, how much voice does he have? Then you get guys, Claxton's a free agent. Is that weighing on his mind? Cam Thomas is, not healthy right now, but he has games where he's locked in and games where he's not locked in. Dennis Schroeder kind of playing for a contract more or less, to get more money again. Then you look at guys like Ben Simmons out of the lineup. You try to force him in the lineup when you were Jacque Vaughn. Luckily, They don't have that problem now because Simmons is out for the year. He was ruled out this morning, so that's why the injury designation is not here. At this point, if you're not going to win and you're not going to try to really push forward for the play-in necessarily or push up for a playoff spot, then you might as well play young guys, Jalen Wilson, more minutes. You got to get some of the younger guys in there. Playing around with the lineups, like Bridges has been filling at the 2 for Thomas. Cam Johnson was coming off the bench. Then he starts at the 3, plays a little bit of the 4. It's just kind of all over the place with them. Nick Claxton does go -1 to an 83, and then Ben Simmons gets the -1 to a 77. So not major changes for them. But from a scoring standpoint, Bridges has not been scoring like he was. He had a 38-point game, but then he has a lot of games where it's 15, 4, 11, range, like not scoring the greatest. So at the end of the day, like it's got to be accountability from the players in this locker room, the culture in the front office of what you want to build going forward for Brooklyn. Denver. So looking at Denver, they've been on a roll since the All-Star break, 5-1. Obviously, you know what you get from Nikola Jokic. Jamal Murray's kind of rounding into form. Had some good scoring games overall. Michael Porter Jr. has those games where he has really good bursts. 30 points in one of the games at the end of February. Obviously going to get stability out of Aaron Gordon, KCP, those kind of guys. What you need to look for with Denver is one piece off the bench that can help solidify them for the playoffs. They got to get a little bit more bench strength because you can't rely on Peyton Watson, Reggie Jackson, Christian Brown, Julian Strother, DeAndre Jordan. Like those guys come playoff time. You got to have one more piece to kind of bridge the gap there, in my opinion. Not saying that they're going to get bounced early, but it's going to be tough as you go through the playoffs, play tougher matches. Still think they're going to be good, but can they win the championship with a limited bench? Looking at their changes, Michael Porter Jr. goes +1 to an 83 overall. Reggie Jackson goes -1 to a 76. Colin Gillespie goes +1 to a 69. That's based on his 18-7 line in the game that Jamal Murray didn't play, I think. And then he had another scoring outburst game as well. Played well in the G League. He's finally healthy, so I don't mind +1 to a 69 for that one. Indiana Pacers, who hasn't been healthy, is Tyrese Halliburton, and it shows. He goes -1 to a 91 overall, +1 to Benedict Mathurin to an 81 overall, -1 to a 79 for Aaron Nesmith. I thought that Jalen Smith would go down just because he hasn't been as productive lately. What's weird is no change for Ben Shepherd, who's been in the rotation and had some good scoring games. 3 scoring games in double figures in the month of February. It's just interesting overall. They have Jarris Walker at a 76 still, but then you don't touch Ben Shepherd. That tells me that they didn't even bother to look at anything outside of Halliburton and Mathurin, which is kind of sad in my opinion, because if you're going to change those two, you got to change that the Pacers have been struggling. They're not on the same pace. They're in the play-in right now. Like, you don't want to play the Pacers if they're healthy, but Halliburton's worried about that All-NBA. It changes things. Like, yes, you have stability with McConnell and Nembhard, but it changes things. Like, for Halliburton. Really, like, if he's not healthy, you can have Siakam and Mathurin and Turner, but not having a healthy Halliburton to get guys easy shots is not going to be good. The hamstring just not looking good for Indiana. I think they could get bounced early if they make the playoffs. We'll see. Pelicans, looking at them, they so-so performance. I don't know how Zion went down. He goes -1 to an 88 because he had a couple games where he looked really good. Almost had a triple-double in one of them. Some 20-point games. I would have left him at the 89, personally. Who did go up is Brandon Ingram. Obviously, we know he's able to score the ball heavily. Goes +1 to an 87. Herb Jones goes +1 to an 81. Lockdown defense as usual. Najee Marshall goes -1 to a 74. And then Matt Ryan, a couple games of him shooting it well, goes +1 to a 73 overall. They get Malcolm Hill back on a 2-way contract. They got a 10-day contract with Isaiah Brockington, who scored his first couple points in the last game. It was a blowout. I believe they played the Hawks, if I'm not mistaken. And I just want to say with the Pelicans, if they get in the playoffs and everybody's healthy, they could be scary. But they also could get bounced early. Like, it goes 50-50 with them. Like, it depends on what effort they're going to put forward, all that stuff. Interesting note with Zion, he said if he's an all-star next year, he'll be in the dunk contest. I don't know that, like, Zion's an electric dunker, don't get me wrong. But in the dunk contest, how much electric stuff is he going to do to turn it around? But, we'll see. Detroit Pistons. Back to the usual losing. 9-game losing streak. 0-6 since the All-Star break. Not trying to win, but leave it to the front office to bring on a 10-day contract. Taj Gibson, who you don't need. What are you bringing him there for? For the locker room to have a voice? For what? Monty Williams sucks as a coach with this team. He's been outcoached all season. He doesn't make sense with his rotations. It just doesn't. Like, oddly enough, in this update, no change for Evan Fournier, who's been really good lately. Had some good scoring games. He doesn't get a change. I don't understand what 2K is doing here. Overall. Like, it just doesn't make sense. You give Cade Cunningham a +1 to an 85. He had a good, a 30-point game, 8 assists. That's great. But I don't know that he deserves to be an 85. Like, they're not winning. Like, what are you rewarding here? Like, to boost him up to an 85, like, they're not winning. Jaden Ivey goes -2 to a 79. Isaiah Stewart, well-deserved. He's back in the starting lineup, +1 to a 77. Well-deserved for Simone Fontecchio, +1 to a 77. Doing really well. But then you don't drop James Wiseman. You don't drop Sasser, who's been shooting like 23% from the floor. Wiseman not looked great either. Like, and you don't boost Evan Fournier. Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing in this update? Like, you got to balance the team. Like, I mean, Fournier at least could get a boost to a 75. Like, he's averaging what, like 9 points over since the trade. That's decent enough that he could at least got a +1 boost. I'm not saying, boost him heavy, but, overall, it is what it is with Detroit. They're not trying to win, but still, like, Quentin Grimes, like, develop him with some minutes. Like, let him get a bunch of shots. Like, their only changes they've really made, Stanley Umide gets converted from a 2-way contract. You get Buddy Boeheim, who struggled shooting the ball the last 2 years. That's who you bring in on a 2-way. You couldn't bring in Xavier Simpson. Like, come on. Got to be better, Detroit. Another team that's got to be better, but they're all about kind of, I guess, going to tank out because they lose Scotty Barnes to an injury, unfortunately. It looks like Barnes is going to be out for the year. Barnes goes, he gets the -1 to an 85. Interesting enough, Quickly does go up. He gets in +1 to an 81. Jakob Poeltl's probably out for the year now, but he did get a +1 to an 82. Bruce Brown struggled badly since being in Toronto. Just doesn't fit the team at all. -1 to a 77. Grady Dick, +2 to a 76. He's been really, really scoring consistently since coming back. I thought some changes they could make. Jordan Nwora deserved to go down a slight bit. They do get Jamias Ramsey, who's back in 2K. He does have a face scan. I'll do a separate upload for him, editing his tendencies and attributes later. But yeah, some of their changes. DJ Carton goes on a two-way. Mohamedou Guy goes on a two-way. Javon Freeman Liberty is converted to a standard contract. It'll be interesting to see what they do going forward. Kelly Olynyk basically is now the starting center. You got to figure out what you're going to do at power forward. They patched it with Agbaji last game. We'll see if that continues moving forward. I predict it will, just to get him development minutes. That allows Grady Dick to kind of move up to the small forward. You piece together other minutes with guys in spot minutes at the two and move forward. So it's just all about development with Barnes and Pirtle injured now. Houston Rockets. Looking at them, they're kind of up and down. Like you get great performances. Like Tari Eason's out for the year, so he's not going to help. Just want to make that housekeeping note. But you get good performances. One game from Jalen Green. The next game you don't get a lot, but I just thought he deserved to go up in this one. He had some good scoring outputs since the last update. Couple 30-plus point games, some 20-point-plus games, things like that. Van Fleet looked okay. Some 20-point games from him. Who does go up in this update is Jabari Smith Jr. +1 to an 81. Amen Thompson goes -1 to a 79, and then Cam Whitmore -1 to a 78. They did manage to swap Amen Thompson to shooting guard, and then it looks like Holiday switches to point guard, even though he doesn't get a ratings update, sadly enough. Holiday's been consistent all year. I thought he deserved to at least be at a 74 with this grouping of guys right here, but 2K thought otherwise. We'll see what happens if they can continue to lock in now that Van Fleet's back from injury. Alperen Sengun, he had 45 points, 23 points, in a couple games, has looked really good for them. So, yeah, just play hard, kind of develop guys while you're still leaning on guys like Sengun, Green, Smith Jr., things like that. So, going over to the San Antonio Spurs, 2-5 since the All-Star break, not, interesting enough. No Wemby update, despite getting a 5x5, the youngest in NBA history. It's just interesting because Wemby is the rare case where it's like you don't want to overrate him, but you kind of have to overrate him just based on what he does. I thought he deserved to go up one, at least to get in the 90 overall club. Personally, that's just me. Devin Vassell has been consistent. Changes for this update. Zach Collins goes +1 to a 78. Malachi Branham, who spot started last game, where is he? +1 to a 75. And then Devontae Graham goes -1 to a 74. A couple two-way changes in Gray and Boyea. Overall, it's the Spurs. Like, Wemby wants to win. They want to get a higher draft pick. Like, it's just going to be a battle. Like, I hate this Ramona Shelburne, ESPN, stirring up the pot. Wemby's not happy and this and that. Like, what's Wemby going to do? Opt out of his contract? You can't. You're stuck. You're under team control. Like, you ain't going nowhere. Like, you can have input in the offseason. We'll get different guys in there. Like, if that's what I'm telling Wemby. Like, play hard until the offseason. We'll get different guys in there. We'll get you some help. Hopefully Trae Young, in my opinion. But yeah. Not your average 10K. I thought Jalen Green at least deserved an 82, 83 based on where his performances have been lately. Rightfully so, he was an 81 based on the last update and previous, games where he wasn't good. But this one he deserved at least a +1, +2 boost. Let's go over to the Phoenix Suns. The injury to looking at the injury to Devin Booker, that hurts them overall. What can I say about Phoenix? Like, Yusuf Nurkic has been good. He gets the +1 to an 83 overall. Eric Gordon +1 to a 77. Royce O'Neal, well-deserved, +2 to a 77, or +3 to a 77. Nasir Little, -1 to a 74. Thad Young, -1 to a 74. But where is the update in this one? Like, it just baffles me. Like, Bo Wall doesn't get an update. Like, did they not watch the couple games where he went off? At least give him the +1 to kind of get him up there with your Eubanks. Phoenix is going to come down to health with Booker, KD, and Beal. If Beal's not right come playoffs, they're going to be a first-round exit, sadly. But you have no leeway to do anything next year. Like, what are you going to do to change this team around? The only real thing they can move is like a Grayson Allen, unless you're moving a Beal or something of that nature. You're not getting comparable players to make a run next year. This team is what it is. But they could get healthy for the playoffs and get hot and make it to the conference finals too. Like, never know. OKC. Looking at OKC, they've been winning. They solidify some depth on the team by getting Mike Muscala off the buyout market. You have Gordon Hayward, but he's looked awful with this team playing off the bench. Like 2 points a game, 3 points a game. Like, he's not doing well. Who has done well is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, consistent all year. He gets the +1 to a 96 overall. +1 for Chet Holmgren to an 87 overall. +2 for Jalen Williams to an 85. +1 for Casey Wallace to a 77. And then Jalen Williams goes +1 to a 75. I just look at it overall as, like, Josh Giddey is the weak link for this team, right? Giddey's not playing well, but you can't really sub in Casey Wallace because it makes the team even smaller, right? But if you sub in Hayward, that kind of throws off his ability to play make for the second unit, so you kind of have to stick with Giddey. But we know teams are going to target Giddey defensively. Giddey's not giving you a lot shooting the ball either. It'll be interesting come playoff time with the team not having much experience with the playoffs, how they fare. That could be one of these scenarios where, like, a lower seed beats a higher seed in OKC, and then, it's just an upset. We'll see. Minnesota Timberwolves, they got crushing news this morning. Karl-Anthony Towns is out indefinitely, likely for the rest of the regular season, maybe even for some of the playoffs, depending on the severity. Man, you can't win without Karl-Anthony Towns. I love Naz Reid. I think he steps in well for them, but it takes away a big bench piece in Naz Reid. Now you're asking him to do something totally different as a starter. Towns being out really, really hurts them. Their ratings changes, +1 for Anthony Edwards back in the 90 overall club. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, +1 to a 76. TJ Warren, who they just signed, goes -2 to a 74. I thought Naz Reid deserved a bump to an 80, as well as Jaden McDaniels, but it is what it is. The Wolves are 4-3. They kind of been up and down performance-wise. It's interesting watching, like, you watch former players, right? And they look at Anthony Edwards and they're like, hey, he's the next star of the league. But Edwards is inconsistent. Like, I love Anthony Edwards' game when he's consistent, but when he's not taking bad shots, it takes him out of the game. He just got to get more discipline with the shot selection, in my opinion. Minnesota's still scary for the playoffs, but if they don't have Karl-Anthony Towns, they might get bounced early as well. Portland Trailblazers. So they're in development mode, obviously. Anthony Simons is kind of back at de facto point guard because Scoot Henderson is injured. Shaden Sharp is out for the year probably. You're playing some of the young guys in drop. Reith, Jabari Walker, Chris Murray's been playing a bunch. So that's kind of what they're signaling for the rest of the season, is just the development. We'll see what happens in the offseason with, like, a Jeremy Grant. DeAndre Ayton's been playing well. He does get a boost, a +1 to an 83 overall. Tamani Kamara gets a +1 to a 75. Matisse Thybulle goes -1 to a 75. Delano Banton +1 to a 74. And then Ashton Higgins, who's played well as the backup point guard, gets a +3 to a 70 overall. Basically, at this point, like I said, development, and then that's what you aim for going forward. See who you want to keep for next season. Golden State Warriors. Interesting enough for them, 5-2 since the All-Star break. Steve Kerr there for at least 2 years, along with Steph Curry. That timeline intertwines. They did get a scorer in Lester Canones converted to a standard contract. They bring in Pat Spencer on a two-way. Chris Paul is back healthy. That helps. Wiggins is back out. Unfortunately, we'll see. So far, he's missed the 4 games. We'll see how long he's out for. That makes a big difference. Clay as the 6th man. And then you get Jonathan Kuminga playing at a good level for them. But the changes for them, -1 for Steph Curry to a 95, +3 for Andrew Wiggins to a 79. Brandon Podziemski goes +1 to a 78. And then Dario Saric -1 to a 78. So just got to get consistency out of the Warriors, especially with trying to balance some of the young guys in Podziemski, Trace Jackson-Davis, even Kuminga, along with the veterans in Curry, Green, Paul, and Thompson. Last but not least, the Washington Wizards. Looking at the Wizards, not good. 16-game losing streak for them. Kyle Kuzma does go +2 to an 83, +2 for Denny Avdija to an 82. Jordan Poole has really played well since flipping to the 6th man. He is +2 to a 79. Position change for him to point guard. Corey Kispert +2 to a 79. Bilal Coulibaly +1 to a 77. Shooting guard is now his position. And then Landry Shamet, last but not least, -1 to a 75. I thought Johnny Davis deserved to go down. He's been shooting abysmal for them. Interesting enough, for the Wizards, who's been playing well, is Tyus Jones. Excuse me. He really gets everybody involved. Overall, like, you got guys like Rashawn Holmes has been in the rotation. He didn't get a boost. Eugene Amarui didn't get a boost. I thought those two were definitely guys that deserved to get a small boost. Even 1 point each would have been something. Just acknowledge kind of their play. But overall, it is what it is for the teams. But looking at it, you're looking at a lot of teams vying for that play-in. In the East, it's basically 7 through, 4 through 11, and then in the West, it's 6 through 10. How that can kind of shape up as the year goes, but it is what it is. I wanted to talk about something really quick. So I had a kind of a personal project of my own. I went in and edited all of the generic two-way 10-day guys that have generic face scans. Got them fixed up with a lot of community edits from Dirty 8 Speech, Easy Ed 341, myself, the ATD guys. I threw in a mixture of faces. I'm going to add those into this new update. I'm going to leave the ratings and tendencies and all that stuff stock for all the players, except for who I'm importing. I'm going to upload that hopefully tomorrow and get that out to the community at the latest Saturday morning. But wanted to get all of those faces in, get the tendencies. I did the faces, the tendencies, the ratings, and also some badges, accessories for all of them. So there's 90 plus players total, if you count the G League players that I did, about 70 to 75 for the NBA side. But yeah, please go over to my videos. Make sure you're hitting the like button on all of them. Make sure you're subbing to the channel. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Pete Toll, or PT Sports 84 as well. So, yeah, like decent update for 2K, not a large one. But my hope is that we get at least 2 more ratings updates, to gear up for the playoffs, things like that. So I'll be able to bring more content to you. If there's any likeness updates, any retro updates and stuff like that, I'll have videos out for that. But make sure you look out for the video with my roster, adding those guys into this one. And then I'll be able to show it off, and then everybody can kind of use it as a base if they want updated faces for the missing cap faces for players overall. But thanks everybody for tuning in. This has been the 7th official NBA 2K24 ratings update review. Like I said, please, while you're watching, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I bring you lots of 2K content throughout the year. Like I said, there's about 68 videos individually of all the player faces that were updated. Thanks so much to all the creators. I'll highlight more of those creators formally in tomorrow's video. But thanks everybody for watching, and take care.